NZMS started as a preservation microfilm bureau, and it's still a big part of our day-to-day business. In 25 years, we've microfilmed over 12 million pages of New Zealand's national newspaper collection, and are industry leaders in the development of microfilming standards, with NZMS contributing on international standards committees. Our focus on process and guidelines for microfilming helped define our standards when we first started digitising nearly 20 years ago. Our commitment to image quality and archival standards is the 101 for all our microfilming and digitisation work, and our processes and staff training are built around care of original collections. The preparation, quality assurance and quality control from the microfilming component of our business naturally transferred over to digitisation. Even the analogue component of microfilm capture is now in the 21st century, with some digitally born images written to microfilm using a 35mm archive writer. Today we're hoping to give you an overview on Digitisation 101 and some ideas for you doing projects in-house or using a bureau like NZMS.
That was a bit of an introduction into how NZMS started with microfilm and moved into digitization. We have about 6 or 7 different videos that we're going to play for you today, and we'll intersperse time for conversation and comments and interaction between those. So just send us a chat if you have a comment or would like to speak about something or have any questions that you want to address. And then we will have a longer section for discussion towards the end after a message from our director, Andy.
One of the key first questions to ask is, why are we digitizing? It may seem like a simple question, but it influences a whole spectrum of ideas surrounding digitization. Knowing what your intended outcome is influences your entire process. There are no absolutes here. Each scenario is different. Items in the natural world physically degrade. This is inevitable and one of the more obvious concerns. Time is that unfortunate enemy, and often creating a digital surrogate is the best available method to continue to provide access to an item whilst preserving the original. Physical items are under continual exposure to the elements, temperature, relative humidity and light. But we also have degradation of material due to human interaction in open reading rooms, or even potential destruction from animal life, as we can see in the edges of these papers here. By providing access to a high-quality digital surrogate, you can consider putting the original material into a controlled environment and reducing access to that original. Sometimes digitizing at the best possible quality now can ensure that the physical items do not need to be rehandled at a later date for digitization. You may be wanting to digitize to provide access and reach beyond the traditional walls of an institution or archive. Ingesting digitized objects into an internal database or the larger World Wide Web can connect with wider and more diverse audiences. You may be considering creating a digital version of a paper-based information system so that you may take advantage of the digital methods of interrogating and manipulating data. Creating a digital version of a traditional card-based index system is the perfect example of this. Digitization of written information provides us with the opportunity to take advantage of optical character recognition or transcription in order to create searchable documents. Or you may want to deliver your records on a platform such as an ebook or Kindle device. As the intention is to lift text off the page, you may consider scanning at a lower quality just to ensure that this can happen. Considering why you are digitizing can provide you with the insight into your method. You may consider how much of something you are digitizing. If we are digitizing in order to create a lasting historical record, perhaps we don't stop at the image. You might expand your digitization to reveal more of the provenance of an object or archive. An example would be photographic albums. Often the story is not contained in the photographs alone. The provenance is contained within the notes written in the margins, but also within the relationships of photographs to each other on a page. There are many different considerations as to how you would digitize an item, and we will go into these in further depth now.
Okay, those were just a few considerations on why you may digitize an item or a collection of items. I think we'll just continue on into how we assess and handle and conduct the digitization. And these sections include a number of different tips and tricks if you are assessing items which you may have in your own collection and deciding how those items might be digitized. So we'll roll into those. I might check the chat for a moment and see what we've got. Okay. Okay, great. We've got everybody. Okay, we'll just roll into the next one.
There are a number of factors to think about when assessing an item or collection for digitizing. Access to where it is stored. Create an inventory of your collection. Will additional workspace be needed for oversized items? Determine what may be most important. You can't always do it all. Think about how you will move items between storage and capture. Utilising trolleys between workstations to minimise handling. Also think about dimensions. Type of media, is it glazed, framed, or bound volumes? The time taken during preparation greatly influences the success of your project. Here is an inventory or checklist of items to be digitised. This will help allow for quoting, pricing, or budgeting against fixed costs. It also helps us identify types of material to match to methods of capture. Fragility of material will determine if you utilise contact or non-contact capture. There is a range of equipment that's suitable for many methods of capture based on the original items. One of the first questions we ask our clients is, how do you want to use your images? You may have a collection of out-of-print and copyright books that you want to make text searchable and available online, or retire documents from physical access, or you may have a large-scale preservation in exhibition, or just a copy to pass on to family. A key message when digitising is do it once and do it right. Ideally, you would scan a single flat item, as this usually gives the best capture. Scanning bound items presents challenges with lying flat. Aggressive binding can cause text blocks lost in the spine, difficulties to OCR due to text curvature, and shadow. But not everyone wants or can remove bindings. It is possible to capture bound items using a variety of devices. Here at NZMS we have overhead capture options, including an SLR as well as customised book scanners. These are well suited for photo albums, scrapbooks, minute books, to name a few. Everyone has or knows someone with a box of treasures like this. There's often a variety of mismatched items, photos of varying sizes, albums containing mounted photos, negatives and slides, and other ephemera. Here we're assessing the collection against an inventory, and we're looking at types of media and identifying which scanner is best suited for capture, and also creating an estimate of image counts. We're noting the condition of the item and recommending how the scanning operators will handle the items at capture, supporting the pages as it turns. It's also an opportunity to identify where images are missing. Envelopes always offer a bundle of surprises, and here we have some transmissives amongst all our reflectives. It's important to remember the back of photographs often have descriptive metadata components, so allow for additional image counts. Maybe not all the images require capture. Remember, relevance to the collection or some subjects are unidentified. Written information on the page is important too, as it provides provenance of the image to the album page. The use of gloves is often a hot topic. When handling manuscript type objects, it's preferable to have clean, dry hands. Wearing gloves tends to reduce manual dexterity and has been known to transfer dirt or smear the item. Gloves are an essential when handling photographic items to prevent transfer of skin oils to the images. However, the final say on white gloves or not white gloves will come from a conservator's condition report or client preference. For thin paper documents or difficult to separate, the aid of a paper finger will allow easier movability between pages. It's always best to turn pages from the middle edge rather than the corners to minimise risk of further damage. A major factor to consider when thinking of digitising is your output specifications. We recommend capture a high resolution that enables the smallest detail to be easily read. For example, the smaller the type, the higher the resolution needed. Clients may require a derivative for access, for example a JPEG or a PDF. You will need to think of your long-term storage requirements of your TIFF masters. An average project deliverable would be over 100 gig, and we have often delivered 1 terabyte of data. Have you thought about creating a contact proof sheet from a sleeve of slides? This will allow the user to view and select individual slides for a higher resolution scan. This can save time and money when accessing potentially large slide collections. Here we have my mother's scrapbook from her theatre days. Scrapbooks are a commonly used way to record New Zealand history and are often requested for digitisation. Would somebody please define? Okay, so I just had the question. I did think about that when I actually pre-recorded. So transmissive is a negative or a glass plate. So light has to go through it to be able to scan, whereas reflective is your paper-based image, such as a book or a printed photograph. So transmissive negative, reflective paper-based.
Light has to go through transmissive, yes. Light has to bounce off reflective.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions or comments so far? Okay, well, maybe we'll roll on to the next one. Here we go.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Sure.
Can you explain why you use TIFFs as master copies? Why the TIFF format?
Okay, I'll answer that. Main reason TIFF has been used, it's been around a very long time, and the TIFF format has an advantage over a lot of other formats, and that's where the name essentially comes from, tagged image file format. The TIFF format allows us to include a lot of metadata about the images, and in that case it's very handy in that you can embed information about your object within the TIFF. A lot of other formats of images, you need to have external metadata and other information. And while we do a lot of work with people who use external metadata, there is always a risk with external metadata that the information could be lost. The TIFF format is very handy in containing that information, and it's been very stable over a number of years.
How do you include the metadata in the TIFF format? Because I know in JPEGs I have to add it externally. How does it include it in the TIFF format?
Okay, there's a number of ways you could do that. A number of our capture devices have the ability to embed information into the TIFF in the form of EXIF metadata. Adobe Photoshop, which we use for a number of post-capture processes, we can add IPTC-based metadata. There's a lot of discussion around what's the right place to put information in, and what we have discovered is that when in doubt, you can use the description field. It is common amongst all of the different metadata types. If you put something in the description field for EXIF metadata, it'll show up in IPTC metadata and Dublin Core and any other metadata reading applications. They will all read that. So when in doubt, if you want to put some information in about the object, you can use a description field, sorry.
We have a couple more questions. Minimum recommended resolution. or photos, and TIFFs, are they lossless?
Okay. TIFF can be lossless. TIFF can have compression. The normal TIFF compression is LZW, which is in effect lossless. What it does is, to describe it simply, it looks for common elements of color within a job, within a file. When you have a color is described in a red pixel, a green pixel, and a blue pixel, each of them have 3 characters to describe it. If you can come up with a character like, call it A, instead of 9 characters for describing the RGB color, then you can say, if you had a lot of blue sky in a picture, you could say, do A for 50 pixels wide. That's roughly how compression works with LZW compression, and it means that you can make an image smaller without losing any compression. For a minimum recommended resolution for a photo, ultimately that's going to be up to your intended use. But going with the technical standards and guidelines, if you have a small photograph, like say a 4x6 inch, you wouldn't want to capture it at any more than say 3,000 pixels of information at your widest point, because all you're going to give yourself is lots of really sharp film grain. If you're going with a 4x5 or an 8x10 transmissive image, your film grain is a lot smaller, so you can capture at a much higher resolution. So 2 things to consider in digitization of photographs: what your intended use is and how large your original is. That will help.
Great. Any other questions on transmissives versus reflectives or compressions or file formats? If not, maybe we'll roll into the next video, which is items which require special handling or special digitization consideration.
Some items are of such importance to our cultural heritage that they may require special handling or capture equipment. Some scenarios where you can't capture with a standard scanner could include rare, valuable, or delicate books that have a limited opening. Or framed items that can't be captured on a flatbed due to the thickness of the frame. Specialist heritage scanners also illuminate the object so as to minimise any shadowing inside framed items. For maps and plans that may be too delicate or too large, or where the surface is buckled, you may need to consider specialist heritage scanners. Some oversized items can be up to a few metres in length. Here's an example of a large map being scanned on a cruise heritage scanner, as the client desired the highest quality capture possible in New Zealand. This map was scanned in multiple passes and stitched together post-capture. The detail captured can be extraordinary. Some extremely rare and or fragile items may require specialist handling under the guidance of a conservator. Here we demonstrate how a conservator-led approach leads to the use of specialist materials and handling during page turning. Some conservators will recommend clean dry hands, others could ask for cotton gloves. Paper triangles are helpful when turning vellum pages. Snake weights can be used to support the pages of a book, which are not currently being captured. A benefit of paper triangles is that you can minimise the likelihood of touching the object with your hands. Here we show the operator finding the point in between pages where the book is most open. The paper triangle now slides easily in between the pages. Once the page is lifted, you can easily use a finger to gently support the page as you lift it. The snake weights are gently placed over the pages. taking care where there may be illuminations or embellishments like gold leaf. As you gently take your hand away from the book, the snake weights will support the pages. At this stage, the book's ready for the capture of the next page.
So we just had a couple of comments about the text standards, and we're actually going to cover standards in the next video. I think, is it the next video?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And in there is a QR code you can scan. It will actually lead you directly to the standards we're actually discussing. So if you've got a QR reader, you can, most mobile phones have that available. You can scan it over the screen, and it will lead you to that text standard.
And that will be the exact text standard that's just been asked about.
For the sake of consistency of quality, it helps to have relevant standards to adhere to. NZMS are guided by technical standards when digitising heritage materials. In 1998, the National Archives and Records Administration of America introduced the technical guidelines for digitising archival materials for electronic access. These provide a range of principles for the digital preservation of heritage materials. These guidelines were updated in 2007 to reflect the advances in digitising technology made in the first decade of the 21st century. In 2007, the Federal Agency's Digital Guidelines Initiative was introduced. This was a collaborative effort by US federal agencies to define common guidelines, methods and practices for digitising historical content. Both these standards are excellent sources of information on the technical guidelines for digital preservation, and we're guided by these in our everyday practice here at NZMS.
Hi there, Amanda. Yes, that is Massey's medieval book. I just want to thank quite a few contributors to our webinar session, and Massey University is one of them, as is Palmerston City Council Libraries and Geological Nuclear Sciences have all given us permission to use their items, which we happen to have on site doing actual projects whilst we were setting up this video tutorial. So once again, thank you very much, and good spotting.
Is that a woot? We got our first woot in the chat.
It's a woot. NZMS is guided by the principle that what comes off the scanner is ready for the client. However, some projects require an element of post-capture processing. Now, this may include adjustments to the tone or saturation of an image, a crop or skew adjustment, converting to a colour space appropriate to the deliverable, or applying metadata. This can often be done as a batch action, but sometimes it's needed at an image-by-image level. In some cases, stitching may be required if the capture was made in multiple passes. OCR, or optical character recognition, can be an automated, uncorrected process. Or, for more complex text documents, for example, marginalia, header and footnotes, you may need to explore manual zoning and ordering using specific OCR zoning software. You can explore in-house post-capture solutions, outsource to a third party, or another upcoming trend is crowdsourcing. For example, creating transcription of a large index project in order to allow searchability across your collections or create a catalogue to interact with.
There really is no limitation on what can be digitised nowadays. Digital camera technology is improving all the time, and object photography projects have become mainstream as collection managers look to display images of their three-dimensional objects online. Metals, patches and textiles are increasingly popular subjects for digitisation. Microfilm is traditionally slow to access, can only be used by one person at a time, and it's often stored in a single location. Digitising microfilm presents all the options and advantages you would expect from digitised paper records, and you get to keep the ultimate backups as well. You can work with one frame right through to several million, and in most file types of images, in black and white as well as grayscale format. Microfilm readers such as the ST-View scan shown here offer easy access to your existing microfilm or microfiche collections, enabling users to browse, digitize or print directly from the film. Many of the formats on which our sounds were originally captured, reel-to-reel, vinyl and cassette tapes, are disappearing, and you may be considering what can be done about this. Digitization of these media is becoming more important as these valuable recordings get older. Reel-to-reel tape equipment is becoming harder to find in good condition, and you need to be mindful your analog to digital conversion results in a format that enables long-term access and future format migration. Broadcast video equipment is becoming even more difficult to find in good condition, and when it does, it's expensive. Turntables are still produced, albeit of varying qualities. We don't recommend using the inexpensive USB output turntables as they don't meet the required standards and they introduce undesirable coloration into the audio capture, which is difficult to remove.
Okay, just trying to quickly finish a lolly here. Right, we've got a couple of questions now that I'd like to look at. The inevitable question about data migration. And look, it's a great question. At the moment, the answer to that seems to be that what we're looking at doing is we're using a LOCKSS system is the best that people can find at the moment. LOCKSS stands for Locks of Copies, keeps stuff safe. The idea being that you put your data on as many different copies as you can and put them in different locations. Of course, the problem with that is that you've still created your data all at the same time and your hard drives may all die at the same time. So data migration is an issue that is going to become more and more of a problem going into the future. Personally, I've been working with a few other people. We're looking at how we can come up with some standards for that sort of work in terms of using software like Fixity, which gives you the opportunity to create MD5 checksums of all of your information that you have captured, and on a regular basis check back on your hard drive and make sure that everything on the hard drive is as it was when you originally created it. For my stuff that I have my own personal digitization records, what I do is I regularly copy them from an old hard drive to a couple of new hard drives. I put one into storage off-site and I have one at home. I've been doing that since about 2002 and I have so many DVDs of family snapshots now. It's not funny. It's getting unwieldy. It's getting into the terabytes, and it's a problem I've got. It's a problem everybody's got. I wish I had the answers for you at the moment, but I think it's something we're going to get our heads together about how we're going to deal with.
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you explain the issues with using different media? For instance, bit rot when you're using optical disc, and while flash drive is the better media, material for preserving.
I think you're deliberately trying to bait me there by saying flash drive is a better medium than optical. But yeah, I get what you're saying about bit rot with CDs. I've got CDs and DVDs that were created 10 years ago and they're unreadable. So that definitely does happen. Even in the Talo-Selenine CDs that they sold us on that was supposedly going to last hundreds of years, it turned out that they didn't last that long. For me, as I said before, I think the best way to get around the bit rot situation is using programs like Fixity to check your hard drives, copying your information off your hard drives to newer hard drives on a regular basis, and having lots of copies, keeping stuff safe.
We just had a question, what was the life cycle of an archival DVD, which is...
The life cycle of an archival DVD is variable depending on how you're treating it.
And storing it.
And how you're storing it. They used to say they would last 100 years. I don't believe that's the case. I would, hand on heart, I wouldn't trust one more than a year or two, to be honest. There's only one medium we have found that we can, hand on heart, say will last more than 100 years, and that is microfilm. And if you absolutely had to archive your stuff in a medium that would last generations, my recommendation would be to output from the digital files to microfilm. You don't actually need any electronic device at all to read microfilm. You can use a magnifying glass to read it, and kept properly, it could be stable for hundreds of years.
Any other questions here? Let's go back to it.
The original book has lasted
That's a
thousands
very
of years.
good point.
It is a very good point. Quite often the originals will outlast the digital versions.
Small, but there's a small minority there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you will find these books that have lasted thousands of years have generally been kept in a place where they're not subject to great changes in temperature and not subject to great changes in humidity.
Yeah.
And that is, funnily enough, exactly the same things that will keep digital storage media to last for a number of years as well.
Temperature, humidity, any other considerations there?
Environmental, human factors.
Yeah.
There are many reasons why you create surrogates.
We have that one there. Non-microfiche files vulnerable to software upgrades.
Are non-microfiche files vulnerable to software upgrades? Absolutely, yes. A case in point, I would challenge anyone to read a WordPerfect 2.0 file.
Good point.
Especially given that a lot of them are now on 5-inch floppy disks.
All right, should we play?
Yeah, I think we'll move on to our final clip, which is from Andy, who's unfortunately away at a conference today. He wanted to have a part to play in today's webinar, so here he is.
G'day, I'm Andy Fenton. We were quite excited when Joanna and the Lianza Council contacted us with a view to doing a webinar on Digitisation 101. It's a topic that excites us, as I'm sure you know, and we thought what a cool thing to do to involve a few of our team discussing the things that they love and enjoy doing so much. So I hope you had a good look through our place and the way we do things, and I hope it's given you some ideas on how you might go about doing digitisation projects yourself or with a bureau like ours. I think my history with this sort of work dates back to the 90s when I was solely doing microfilm in the early part of that, and the standards that governed those rigours and processes for preservation microfilm stood us in great stead for producing digitisation standards and guidelines from about 1998 through 2008, I think, and that was actually pretty good. Archive New Zealand spearheaded the first digitisation standard that I know of in this country, and Janine Delaney and I were pretty proud to be working on that. We live and breathe standards in this place, as you, I hope, have experienced in the past 30 or 40 minutes. I'm away at conference, but I did want to contribute to the webinar. So this is me sitting in my office and offering a few insights from my perspective. When people talk about digitisation, I think it really can be as simple as grabbing some of your material, sticking it down on a scan bed, pushing the button, and if it's all set up properly, you'll get some nice images on your computer screen. But many of us have received images that aren't quite right. It may be as simple as a scan line, or it may be that when you print them, they don't look quite as good as they do on your lovely backlit monitor. And we all want to give our customers good quality material, and I think it's important to know the basics of Digitisation 101. I think for me, when people ask what digitisation is, I start at the back end, which is probably in your stacks or your collection stores, or perhaps it's your catalogue that's online or your finding aids inside your organisation, and a customer's asked you or got wind of the fact that you hold something. Hopefully they discovered it online, the fact that it exists, and you've got a need to digitise it. So what does it look like? Is it in boxes? Is it in bound form? Is it in a cool store that might need climatising before you can even touch it? Are you able to get at it and get that material visible, viewable and appraisable, so that you can put a digitisation plan together for what I presume will be an access project, but may have elements of preservation as well. I think from the perspective of the intended user, you can set about doing what you need to achieve. You know what the end game is. It might be an image online, it might be a USB stick full of preservation quality TIFFs. At the very least, my advice is do it once, do it right, and do it fit for purpose. That doesn't mean necessarily creating uncompressed TIFFs for everything in your collection, but it may do. It may be something as simple as some PDFs that people can use more interactively. In either case, you might be restricting access to the collection hitherto and henceforth, and I think that's a nice option for you to consider as a good reason for digitisation. Obviously, costs will weigh some benefits. So if you are able to get at it and have a look at it, you can start to get a feel for what sort of equipment might be used to capture it. And often the 80-20 rule applies here. A lot of it can invariably be done using basic technology. It may be a flatbed scanner, it may be an overhead digital SLR camera. But sometimes you might need a book scanner, a book cradle. You may need a specialist photographic scanner with a high contrast capability. So do think of the options and explore what you might need as you're going about appraising that collection. From there, you're going to think about what prep is required, and you're going to take the material from its enclosures and make it ready to be handled safely at the scanner. Once you've done that, I think it's important to ensure there's no risk in either the transport, the handling, the dismantling, if that's what's going to happen, and obviously the care at the scanner and capture station itself, whether that be from the environment, the temperature, the light, the UV, or heat, or maybe it's sharp objects or a dusty environment, for example. We manage a lot of those things ourselves. You may have to think about that workspace yourself, wherever you might be doing your capture. Thereafter, you're looking at the technology you're going to use to do the work, and I think there's many different scanners, as you've seen in our building, that can do different jobs and can do them to different standards. So think about what's best fit for purpose and most cost effective. Once you've done your capture, you're going to think about post-capture processing. Now, that may involve color management, which is quite technical, may involve some photographic manipulation, such as your high and low points, or your black and white points, and you may need someone who's got a photographic eye to attend to that, or an understanding of those principles. It may be as simple as checking you've got the object captured in frame and it's legible. We have a variety of different rules, and the standards and guidelines can help you there as to what makes up an image that's of acceptable quality. File naming then becomes crucial. If you want to discover what you've digitized now and in the future, you may have to apply suitable file naming, and separate to that, adequate metadata. I think the metadata component is crucial and often underrated. We often supply more metadata than is required for our clients, but we work on the theory that in the future, if more is needed, then at least it's there waiting to be unlocked, even if organizations aren't using it in its full extent at this point in time. I think you need to think about how long you want access to these images that have been created. Is it just for a year or 2 or 3, and then they will be past their use-by date, online or otherwise? Or is digital preservation entering the frame, and do you need to plan on keeping a set of images for a long time? One of the common themes nowadays is the LOCKS principle, LOCKS, and with 2 S's in some cases. And I think it's important to understand what capabilities for digital preservation are available to you in your organisation. So do look into that. I think after you've done all that work, you've got to return or repatriate the collection to its shelving, its enclosures, which may have been improved, maybe acid-free, maybe better storage climate, or even transferred to another organisation, particularly if you've now got access to a digital copy. I think for access to those digital images, your customers want to be facilitated, if you like, in the best possible way. Whether that's the internet, or if copyright doesn't permit, whether that's something you can only provide access to in your buildings, you need to think that through. And I think most customers are pretty understanding, but of course they want everything 24/7 and on a computer at their disposal when it suits them. So do think about that. In-house and outsourcing is important, you know what we'd recommend. But I accept sometimes it's a lot easier for you to do it yourselves. You're right there where the collection is. You may or may not have the skills in-house. If you are setting up a sizable project, one of the rules I like to apply is that if you have to replace a staff member during that project, then there's a lot of hidden costs in getting new people up to speed. If you're lucky, they come in with the technical skills, but over the years I've worked out that sometimes it's easier to bring in the right people and give them the technical skills because we've got the trainers in the place already. But you know what? That whole induction process, the administration, the teaching and handover period takes time. So I often work on 2 to 3 months' salary for the new person as a rule of thumb for what it costs to bring a new person on board. I think when I look at other options for comparing in-house versus outsourced, I've had some remarkable statistics thrown at me as to the so-called true cost to an organisation of doing it themselves. And I'll be quite blunt, some of it's laughable. But when you look at the real estate costs, the true administration costs of staff, the downtime from holidays and sick leave and statutory days, and even the downtime of staff doing nothing if the equipment is faulty, then there are some costs in there that are quite significant to add into your project. So there's lots to think about. We've written papers on this, and there's a lot of material on some pretty solid websites that we can share with you. We've got some resources on our website about the technology you might use. It's easy to get CapEx for some things I've noticed in New Zealand, but it's not always the best value for money for your funders, your ratepayers, your taxpayers, whoever is giving you that money. Maybe it's too easy to get that money for the capital equipment, but the hidden cost is in applying staff to run it. There's nothing more sad, in my opinion, than walking into a fantastic looking imaging lab at an organisation and seeing none of the gear being used. There's a funny paper about possums on the website, and I recommend you have a read of it, but it finishes with some points to the story, or the morals of the story, if you like, and it kind of sums up Digitisation 101 and whether you're thinking about giving it a go yourself or bringing someone in and knowing how to project manage that program. And I just want to read those points to you and close with that. And it reads, no matter how much surety you have in place, the unexpected will happen. Face your issues head on, but check every angle for an unorthodox solution, because they're often out there. In spite of your best efforts and intentions, sometimes it's better to call an expert help. They have the skills and the tools to do the job quickly and efficiently. And it might not be what you're thinking when you read that line from us. If you ever find yourself in a jam, make some noise, because help is out there. And don't make judgments based on appearances. Sometimes the person with the machete is on your side. So I hope you've enjoyed the webinar from our perspective. I hope you've enjoyed doing what we do best, which is interact and enjoy the community around you, which is pretty fantastic in this country. And I hope I'll catch you either here or at a conference sometime soon. Goodbye.
We've had a few more questions here. Jordan asked recently, what's the best model of portable external hard drive?
No idea. No idea. We've had good ones and bad ones from everybody. Generally, there's Seagate and Western Digital make good hard drives. We've had some good, some bad. Generally, I don't personally think the really fancy ones that you get for Macintosh computers that cost about $600 are really worth it. They have exactly the same hard drives in them as anyone else's ones have. You need to consider, if you're going to move it around the country or what, you might want to look at a hard drive that has some kind of shock protection or something like that inside. having said that, if you want to store things for a while, I haven't got a recommendation for that.
Okay.
WordPerfect is giving Paul problems. Yes. Yes. You have my sympathies, Paul. Right.
Any other questions?
Well, do we hand it over to the floor now? We'd love to get some more questions. We're here all day.
Or if anyone else has any comments or experiences with digitization or in organizing your own materials for potential digitization or deciding what methods or standards you're going to adhere to. We've seen the FADGI and NARA guidelines mentioned a little bit, and we use those extensively and have based a lot of our digitization processes around those guidelines. So if anyone has any questions or comments about those are great as well.
I've got a question. How often can we expect those guidelines to be updated?
Good question.
Okay, 1998 it was created, 2004 it was revised, 2007 it was revised, 2011, let's say about every 3 or 4 years.
That'd be about average, yeah.
We're due for another one.
Thank you. Right. I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, we'll put something up on our website when something else comes out.
Yes.
The Archives New Zealand with National Library have been working on a new international Australasian standard. I cannot remember the number of the standard at the moment. If any of you guys can remember it. Yes, it's 13021 or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, this standard was replacing the old S6 standard that was developed in conjunction with NZMS and Archives, and it has a lot of good stuff. Most of it we wholeheartedly agree with. The stuff we don't agree with, we like to go better, or we like to go with FADGI, and that's simply because the stuff that we don't agree with doesn't quite work for what we're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Great question.
Thank you. Right. I'll shut up now and give the floor to somebody else.
That was a great one. Do you think, here's a question from me to Simon, do you think the standards are updated quickly enough? Do you think they should shorten the amount of time between standards updates? Or do you think that 3-year window is a relatively sane amount of time for new technology to be developed than for it to be assessed and the standards to be rewritten and updated? Or do you think it's something that should happen yearly or every 2 years?
I think 3 years is healthy. I've been doing a bit of looking at the gap analysis of standards that was performed in 2011 by the Federal Agency's Digital Guidelines Initiative, and they're well aware of where we don't have enough information at the moment, and there's a lot of stuff around the capture of video and audio that needs to come into a lot of the standards as well. I've been looking at a lot of that stuff lately. There's other agencies working on that, and I think with the amount of different people that are working on all of these standards at the moment, I think 3 years is pretty good because it gives people the opportunity to say spend the first year trying to get your head around the stuff, and the second year putting it into practice, and the third year actually coming up with better ways of doing things and everyone talking about it. So sometimes 3 years is actually a bit short.
Great.
Any more questions, everybody?
There's another one that's come through the chat asking about scanning photos for printing for private use and what specs should be.
Can you make that bigger? We're just going to read.
Okay, let's have a read here.
Read that on the other one. I can't read that there.
Do you want to scroll down, Tyler? It's right, there we go. We have A1 construction drawings printed on transparency paper and vellum. Wow.
So for a brittle drawing, what is the process?
A brittle drawing, what is the process? By brittle, I imagine you are stating that it cannot go through a plan scanner or a contact scanner or sort of thing in an engineering office. Great. So the process for that kind of thing, there's a couple of options you could do. Talking about what options we would use here, we've got a couple of scanners that can do something to an A1 size, or capture devices at least. We've got a medium format digital camera in Auckland which can capture something sitting on a flatbed of that size, and because it's sitting directly on a flatbed, there's no contact other than what it's actually sitting on, so there would be very little possibility of damage to it imparted by any digitizing equipment. Another option is a cruise scanner to capture that sort of thing, and look, even more options thinking outside the square. If you had a old medium format camera, you could set up a rig yourself with medium format camera capturing to 4:5 transparency and then scan the transparency.
You have to find someone to process the film first.
We'll have to find someone to process the film. There are still people who can do that. A little bit roundabout. It's a little bit roundabout, but there's a multitude of options. Look, if you were really feeling like being adventurous, you could get a digital SLR camera and you could set it up on a bimbo type tripod and take 20 photographs of it and use Photoshop to auto stitch it together. It can be done. You just gotta want to do it.
I like what they've said. Absolutely. Contact Alison Barnett and she'll talk you through all the options we've just discussed.
Maybe not the 20 shots with the SLR.
She might not thank us, no. Our CAD team can stitch anything.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, there you have it. A digital SLR on a stick could even give you something that you want.
Finished items still be to scale. Yes, it would be. It can be. We can capture one-to-one.
You can capture one-to-one.
Yeah, so it will be still to scale at a one-to-one capture. So just another question down there that kind of pertains to something we said earlier with the resolution for photographs and printing of.
Specs. Okay, I'll try and have a go on that. Photos for printing for personal use. Now, when you're scanning, I'm assuming that we're talking about photographs here that were captured on your personal camera and printed at a photo lab back in the day. So you don't have the original negatives to scan, you've just got the photographs to scan. And you may want to do them, say yes, great. Okay, and you're wanting to output them again to, and a comment on metadata standards, okay, we'll look at that. You may want to put them out again on, like take the images down to Harvey Norman and get them done again. So what I would be looking at doing is digitizing them to a resolution from a 4:6, a resolution of around about 2,500 pixels on the longest edge to 3,000 pixels on the longest edge. There's not much point in digitizing at any more resolution than that because there's simply not enough detail in the photograph. So if we look at, it's a 6-inch wide image, look at scanning between 400 and 600, 400 and 500 for that. If I could make a recommendation on a scanner, that would be really good for that. The best scanners for doing that sort of thing around at the moment are the small Epson A4 scanners. They come with a, what are they, the V800 now, is it called? I think it is. Yeah, they come with a transparency media adapter, and in my opinion, for under $1,000, you're not going to get anything better. Metadata standards, over to you, Rebecca.
I don't do metadata.
Okay.
It's definitely you.
Right.
You're the standards.
Okay,
people.
I'm trying not to talk too much.
It's all been standards.
I faded out after Epson. Good A3 scanner. Epson make a good A3 scanner. The Expressions XL 11,000, I think it's called. It's an excellent A3 scanner for the price. It's around, gosh, I think it's around $5,000.
Yes.
Going upwards for there, the absolute best scanner you can get in A3 at the moment is the Creo IQ Smart 3. I don't know if you can get them anymore, but if you can find one, expect to pay in excess of $30,000 for one. A4, the V800 Epson.
There's also a Microtech A3 scanner that's lower end than the Epson Expressions. Won't give you quite as nice a scan, and they're significantly slower, but they'll probably run about $1,000 or $1,100 rather than then you jump up to the $5,000 for the Epson Expression, and then from there significantly further to the Kodak Creos.
Okay, metadata standards. Metadata standards are vital to being able to search and retrieve your digitized items. Yes, that's true.
That's true.
Please comment. Okay, I'll talk about what our clients expect from metadata. There are three main metadata standards that are used: IPTC, EXIF, and Dublin Core. Dublin Core is very much a library standard. IPTC was designed by people doing photographic collections, and EXIF was created for camera manufacturers to describe all the stuff about what the cameras were doing. All are good for all their specific purposes. None are ideal for everything. The best solutions that I think are available at the moment are using a combination of the metadata. What's that other comment say? It's so far away from me, I'm struggling to see. Thank you very much.
Just to raise a thorny one here.
Go on.
It's all very well to say use a combination of metadata.
Yes.
But that places the person who's doing the description in a constant dilemma, doesn't it?
I'm not sure about a constant dilemma. Sorry, what was that?
You're using Dublin Core?
Yeah, we're using it at the moment. We've actually started digitising some photos from the original Box Hill first time buildings. There's all this really boring stuff. Concrete onto slabs, pretty much that's the sort of stuff that we're doing. And, I don't really know what I'm getting at. Like, it's sort of, it's like cataloguing. The explanation of how to enter it has been a bit, I found it wishy-washy. So, like, the person I sit next to, I'm like, because it's just, I guess, it's just practice. That's all it is. It's not cataloguing, it's practice. Not anything for that matter, it's practice. So, yeah, I've only really just started doing it last week. But my teacher who's taking us for Lynn, she's like, don't stress too hard about it because we'll be going back to this after the term. So I've only just touched on it.
Okay, I think for your metadata, you need to define exactly what information you think will be relative to your users of your collection at a later date. And so it's hard for me to talk about what is good metadata to be putting into objects because it's not my collections we're dealing with. Ultimately, it's going to be your collections and you are the final arbiter of what information is important to you.
And how discoverable you want it.
Exactly, yeah. Yes.
How much time and you've got to do it as well. I guess that's best cost, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, there's always got to be a cost factoring, I suppose, into it. You can't always do everything. It's just having some metadata, just a limitation.
You're right. And then there's copyright.
That's a good point.
No,
it's a rabbit hole.
And orphan works and things like that.
Okay, sorry for opening that can of worms.
No.
I think we'll end it there.
I better shut up now.
Shut up.
As a private bureau, we actually tend to put copyright back onto the client, and just it's not our position to actually ensure that your copyright is valid or out of copyright. But we will always bring it up if we're concerned. We always bring it up as a company.
We will not assist you in violating copyright.
Not intentionally.
But if you say to us, we have the right to copy this work, then we have to take that on face value.
So transference of rights, but that's only if you own it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
In terms of, say, for example, a vinyl record or a cassette tape, the Copyright Act actually contains a provision which allows you to do something called format shifting, which means if you've got a vinyl record and you wish to make an MP3 recording of it to play on your iPod for your own personal use, the Copyright Act allows you to do that. It's the same thing in the Copyright Act that allows you to record something off the television to play back. You know, otherwise they would be arresting by their MySky machines.
Oh yeah, it might be actually.
They're talking New Zealand. You see.
That's right.
Of course. Yes. Their accents. Yes.
Any other chat questions dealing with data that's co-owned?
Sorry?
I deal with data that is co-owned.
Computer programs using a backup copy and keeping originals stored. Yeah, I mean it's a fairly open.
Yeah, read the end user license agreement for every computer program you have. It could be different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a copyright lawyer, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Copyright gets really tricky, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. And
well, that's taken us to the 1:30 mark. So I think we will release everybody back to their jobs. But thank you so much, guys, for running the.
thanks for listening.
Really great. And no worries. We'll also be putting a copy of the NZMS videos up on the YouTube channel so that people can access them if you've got any further questions. And I'm sure you guys would be happy to answer any other questions if people wanted to get in touch.
Absolutely. Yes.
Cool.
All right, thanks
Okay,
everyone.
bye everyone.
Thanks for having us, everybody.
See you.
See you.